generations. And now, the power of two restores the one.
We got a bidet! Hey everybody, and welcome back for another video. In today's video, we are covering The Quiet Place, or is it the or the? Or the A Quiet Place. There we go. I thought it was The Quiet Place, but no, it's A Quiet Place. Day one. So this is supposed to be a prequel to the original, right? Because we got the first one, we got the second one, and then now we got the prequel. And
Which it's at the same time kind of a standalone film because none of the characters are returning.
right. And I don't, at least I didn't fact check or anything, and I don't know the lore, down to the nitty gritty for this series. I didn't know if maybe Joseph Quinn's character Eric, if he was maybe a character in the first or second movie. I don't know. I have my doubts, but yeah.
I'll take a look while you're discussing your thoughts.
So just to kind of put it out there, see where I'm coming from, and maybe Sarah can say where she is too. I liked the first movie, and then when I watched the second movie, I was pretty bored just because I felt like they really didn't add anything to the universe, and they basically just showed, what the family was up to without, again, adding very much to it. I thought the original had a decent amount of creativity with like how they, wrapped up that film and whatnot. But I would say going into this movie, I was more or less open-minded and hoping for a better experience than the second movie. Well, the second movie before this one came out, because now it's the third movie. Just because, I'm with it being day one, that's exciting because, we were basically thrown into this world when all this stuff had already happened and only, a few people were still around. So now we get to see what happened when the world is, as we know it right now, and then it, goes through this craziness. And so, with all that being said, unfortunately, I would have to say that I was pretty bored during the movie. I feel like they really didn't add too much to the lore of the universe. We kind of already knew the same stuff as before. We were basically just following two people as they're trying to survive, and will they make it out of the city or will they not, kind of a thing. And we get that from the trailer. So I
Eric
think
is not a character in the other movies.
okay, so he's a standalone character. Um, I do feel like, that there was nothing wrong with the acting. There was nothing wrong with really anything on a technical level. I just felt like the story was just kind of bland, and we didn't learn anything, right? We didn't throw anything new into the mix. And so I thought that's why it was kind of boring.
There needs to be a high level of suspense and stress for these types of movies to work out. You need to have characters that you really care about from the beginning or very early on to really be worried about them as time goes on. And I feel like this movie just didn't have that, right? So it's not just about the scariness, right? It's kind of more of a thriller in a way. Um, at least, with the struggle to survive and everything. But honestly, with this movie, my favorite character was the cat. The cat was the only one I cared about, which is sad because you've got two lead actors, actresses. I don't know Lupita. She plays Samira.
I
But we've got
believe she was in um yeah, she's from Us. And believe
okay.
it or not, she's Maz from Star Wars.
Interesting. Her eyes did look very familiar, so that makes sense that she's from Us. But then we've got Joseph Quinn, who I'm used to being like, what is it? Eddie Munson, I think was his character name in Stranger Things, where he's like a teenage or a young adult who's like a total rock and roll dude.
Sounds familiar.
And in this movie, he's just a total dweeb. And I don't mean that as like he should only ever play the one type of character. But like there was nothing that made me care about his character in this movie. He was just kind of a nobody. Uh,
Well, I would also say at the same time, like when he played his character in Stranger Things, I feel like that character was written in a way where we're like, yo, that's my new favorite character. That character is awesome. And in here, it just kind of seemed like, oh, he's just the average dude. Like they probably didn't need such a big name like Joseph to be playing the part. They could have just had some up and coming person that had little to their name.
but even to that point, what you're saying is that he's meant to be a nobody. But if one of your two main characters is meant
No.
to be a nobody, then who am I supposed to care about?
What I'm really saying is, I wish the writers had written him to be a better character. Uh,
Right.
just because I think he's bland. There's not much that even Joseph could have done with it. So that's why they should have just hired somebody and paid probably a little bit less money.
Yeah, so my point isn't that Joseph did a bad job. It's just that the character sucked. For lack of better words, he just sucked. Both of them did. I didn't care if either of them made it out of this.
So I had debated whether or not I wanted to put this in here, but so one of the things about the movie, and this isn't, I don't think this is a spoiler. I think we kind of get this, but um, Sam, Lupita's character, Sam's character has cancer. Like we know that Sam, based on from what the doctors say, that her time is coming. There's no question. And so she's kind of like living her life as, just passing time until the time comes. It's sad to say, but it appears that her life is pretty boring and that she doesn't get to go out very much, and she's watched a lot by, the people from where she lives. I think it's like hospice or something like that. And so one of the things I had said to Sarah was like, I mean, I get it that this is it's an interesting character background to have, but in a movie where we know she's gonna die no matter what, it kind of pulled me out of like, well, it it felt like it didn't matter to care whether she survived the monsters because she was already, potentially going to be dying soon anyways. And so it was hard to not,
It wasn't somebody young and full of hope
what's that?
because it wasn't somebody young and full of hope.
Not necessarily young, but there wasn't hope, essentially. And I mean, to that point, I mean, they do address that in the movie, which I thought was interesting. But from the get-go, I had been wondering, like, where should I be hoping, like you said, for where these characters are going to be going, especially since I feel like the outside looking in, popular actors amongst all the people in the crowd, probably a good chance of some sort of plot armor. So uh, I don't know. I also felt like the movie, like all the different emotions and tension that we felt for with the first and the second movie, now the third movie, it was all the same here. There wasn't anything that was drastically different. And so I feel like that also took me out of the movie as well because we've already been through it. There wasn't anything super creative about it.
Well, when you already have movies like The War of the Worlds, which is very similar to this movie in terms of, alien creatures coming and having to deal with what happens next. And you got other movies like The Happening, which I only half remember because I saw it a very long time ago, but another similar biological type warfare type movie. It's a been there, done that, so you have to find a way to make it different. And the noise element is what makes this different, right? Because these creatures hunt noises. But I felt like everybody figured it out too quickly, and it wasn't something that it almost felt as if the characters knew as much as we did, even though they were figuring everything out for the first time. Um, which it,
Yeah, because well, I mean,
I,
to be fair, there's things I don't want to spoil. So let's go ahead and give it a rating, and then we can start talking about some of these things too, because um, there's a point I want to talk about too. So
I'm
I
gonna
guess
say one last thing before you give your rating is that this movie was very dark. We
yeah,
saw it at the drive-in, which we know sometimes can make movies darker or appear darker than what they are, just because, they start the movie at dusk, so there's a little bit of background light that makes the movie hard to see sometimes. But outside of that, even just thinking of the color palette of this movie compared to the first one, where they're on a farm and in the forest or the rainforest or whatever, in the jungle, like whatever you want to call their scenery, there was lots of greenery everywhere. The world was very vibrant. This world, although it had to deal with an explosion that kind of made it dark, and it's in, I think, New York, so that makes it kind of dark 'cause the smog and stuff, or at least in this movie it is. I've never been there in person to really know how dark it is over there. Uh, but this movie is very, very bland from a color palette point of view too, which sometimes made it really hard to follow what was happening. All right, go ahead and roll into ratings. I just wanted to throw that in there because I don't feel like that's really a spoiler, but it's something else that I feel like it needs to be told.
yeah. So I'm gonna be putting this movie at a 5 out of 10. I think this movie is an average film. I don't think it's above average. I don't think it's below average. But I also would say if you enjoy the Quiet Place movies, like if they're, some of your top movies, I think you will enjoy it. Like I said, I liked the first one. I was kind of bored with the second one because I feel like they didn't add much to it. And then I felt that same way when I went into this one, feeling like, hey, it's not quite what I was looking for. And I will talk about what I had hoped it would have been more along the lines of when we get to the spoilers. So, um, although the acting and all that was great, the story was significantly lacking, and we've been there, done that, unfortunately.
I don't know how you can say all that and still give it a five because I am at a three. Um,
I thought you
it,
gave me a look because you thought it was better.
no, I feel like this is a below average film. When you have a baseline already for these types of movies and you don't even follow the status quo for the excitement level, I feel like if this movie was as exciting as some of the movies we've had before that are in this type of genre, then it would get a five. If it did something to elevate it, then it would be worth more. But I feel like this was worse. I don't feel like it was an average movie of this type. This was a movie that if I was watching at home, I don't think I would have finished it because I just got too bored. I didn't care.
I probably would be in the same boat. I still think it's an average film. Um, but yeah, we're gonna roll into the spoilers here. Before we kick off, basically what's going on in the movie, I do want to point out what I was talking about, how my expectations were completely different than what happened. So when I heard that they were making day one, I was thinking, oh my God, we're gonna actually get to see like these things are gonna come down. Nobody's gonna know anything. There's gonna be absolute carnage, which there is for like 10 minutes or so. But then, the military's gonna have to step in. They're gonna have to learn about these creatures. And I would have loved to have seen a movie where it was more or less like the boots on the ground survival, like the soldiers that are going through and actually learning about these things, and then they can communicate it to the world saying, we've been fighting these things and we're learning about XYZ, and then they end the movie. That way everybody knows how to try to deal with them. But instead, what we get in the movie is they come down, there's carnage, and then over an intercom, when they're flying on a helicopter, the police, the armed forces, all of them are just being like, yo, they can't swim. And somehow we all know that they can hear us, and that's the way that they're killing us. Like we don't really get to see beyond what the way that we saw it told to us as watchers of the original film. There wasn't anything different. There wasn't something that showed the evolution of, hey, these things are completely different. We know nothing about them. It seemed like they learned it instantly because us as the audience already knew that. So they kind of, I think they took advantage of the fact that we've seen the other ones and we didn't get to see it develop. And so that's why I thought this movie was boring. We could have seen maybe some trial and error of how they find out. Like, oh, they're reacting to this. So maybe it's this thing that they're having that they, prey on us for, and kind of evolve into this idea that they, it is sound that triggers them. Because I don't think they have eyeballs, do they? They just go by their hearing.
Yeah, I believe so.
So, they could point out they don't have eyes. So maybe it's not vision that they see us with. And then maybe they start trying like some different scents, I don't know. I'm just kind of spitballing here, but I wish we would have seen that military type film and then seeing how the world was learning about it. Not just they're here, now we have to get out of the city. And that's basically what it was. So that's why I didn't want to I didn't want to crap all over the movie because it had a different point of view than what I wanted necessarily. Because I feel like with what they chose to do, they did a pretty good job, but it wasn't for me. That's all.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so this movie, it follows like we kind of talked about already. Sam is our main character. We get to learn a bit about Sam right away. Again, like we talked about in the non-spoiler section, Sam has cancer and will be passing very, very soon. And so basically, Sam is trying to do what she can to enjoy herself before she passes away. And so one of the big things that she wants to do is she wants to get pizza. And
From the city.
yeah, from the city specifically. Like you can't go to the local store, get a frozen pizza and pop it in the oven. She wanted specifically that city pizza. And so the movie kind of progresses with, she goes to the city. She gets to go to a marionette show, which I thought was pretty interesting. I I was trying to see if I was picking apart maybe some symbolism or foreshadowing from the marionette. I didn't quite get anything out of it. Did you?
Not really.
I know it stared at Sam at one point and she kind of was like, but I didn't understand the connection there. She almost kind of felt like she was watched, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, all the marionette did was blow up a balloon, which was very cool.
It
Like,
was
how does a
cool.
marionette do that? But, from a symbolism standpoint, all it did was blow up a balloon, and then essentially the marionette was like floating away because the balloon was lifting it, and then the balloon popped and the marionette fell. And that was about it for the show.
Right. And so then after the show, we go outside and then uh oh, we forgot to mention Ruben. Ruben is the guy at the hospice that is basically watching over Sam and allowing her to go to these different places and watching over her. I did not know that this was played by a pretty famous actor. I didn't recognize them. That's why. And it was Alex Wolff. And so if you're not familiar with that or this actor, um, Alex Wolff was the one that was in Hereditary.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
I did not realize it was him.
I say when I saw Wolf on the screen and the in the credits, I was like, I wonder if that's one of the two brothers. Because if you don't know, back in my day, there was a thing called Naked Brothers Band. I wasn't huge into it. My sister was, but one of them, being Alex Wolf, went down the actor road. So, and he's been in a couple of things lately, and he's done a great job. So it's kind of unfortunate I didn't pick that up because I would have probably paid more attention. Um, but he's on the phone. He's basically hearing that something is going on. We can kind of gather from the city that people are in a little bit of hysteria because, something's up. And then we just kind of roll right into the aliens crashing onto Earth. I think it probably only took like 10, maybe 15 minutes. It was not long. I almost felt like it might have been rushed, but it is what it is. They got like an hour and a half to cover. So this is where we get the biggest set piece, in my opinion, because the aliens are everywhere. People don't know what's going on, and they're being picked off one by one. Eventually, our character Sam is able to get away, of course. I think an explosion like blows her back into a shop and she knocks out for a little while. And then she's able to get up and then she goes to a church where a lot of people are hiding inside of the church and they already know. Like, get this. So the aliens crash onto Earth, okay? Within the same day, and she goes to the church. You can see from my picture, because this is from the church scene. They're already telling her to shut up because they know they can hear. Like that's how they're getting them. And that's what I didn't really like. They instantly knew. I guess kind of putting myself in their shoes in general, I wouldn't want to be heard. So maybe that's how they're trying to, play that off. But at the same time, it feels like, well, we know that the noise is the big issue. Why aren't they addressing other things? Like why are we in a well-lit room like they all are? You can see it in my picture. Why aren't they somewhere in the darkness? Maybe because they're not avoiding the fact that maybe they can be seen. So again, that's kind of where my issue is. Sorry,
Well, later in the
rabbit hole.
film, they're talking next to a waterfall openly because they know that the alien creatures can't hear past the white noise of the waterfall. That's something we know from the first movie.
Right.
How do the people in this movie know that if it's the first day that it's safe to talk next to a waterfall?
Yeah, because I that's what I was kind of wondering too. I'm like, okay, how did we figure this out so quick? It doesn't make it because there was tons of aliens that ripped through. I can guarantee nobody stopped for a smoke break behind that waterfall and started having a conversation while things were going crazy. No way. So I don't know. That's kind of why I have issue with it because they know we already know about it, so they're gonna just throw it in there and not spend so much time trying to figure this out. Like I could have very easily seen, and I just thought of this on the spot. So here you go. Parent and their child is, they're running away from these creatures. They eventually get away and they try to sneak and they go behind this waterfall. And they can't get the kid to shut up because they're almost screaming. Well, if the kid is almost screaming and the thing isn't reacting to them, very easily they could be like, well, what is it? Is it the water? And, start to piece things together. But again, we just kind of know it right away. Um,
Yep.
did so they were talking about uh fire and one other thing I feel like that they said that they could talk during and it would be okay. Were those things new or were those in the other two movies?
I must have missed when they were talking about that. I don't remember fire being a thing.
I feel like it was fire and rain that they learned was okay to talk during. But anyways,
Fires aren't very loud, so that seems kind of unusual.
I maybe I misheard. I don't know.
I'm not sure. But she's hiding out in some area with kind of her friends, so to speak, if you will. She makes a clarification. You're not my friend, you're my nurse for Ruben, which is kind of hurtful to him because I think he thought he was her friend. Um, it made me care more for Ruben than it did for Sam, which is unfortunate because the power goes out where they're at and the generator kicks on. Well, the generator is super loud, so they got to go shut that off because again, they somehow know that noise is really bad. Which again, to Jeremy's point, I guess, yeah, making a lot of noise might seem bad, but at the same time, how is the generator not that same kind of white noise as like a waterfall? How
Oh,
would you how would you know that one works and one doesn't?
which is funny that you say that because I feel like they like mentioned some sort of referencing white noise later on in the film that's kind of what distracts it. So, yeah, if the generator was classified as white noise, I don't know. I feel like that would have allowed them just like the waterfall to be able to conversate. Like if they're sitting next to the generator and then talking very softly, I feel like that would have been just fine.
Or
But
if maybe the monsters just attack the generator because that's what's making the noise.
right.
Like how is that dangerous to you as long as you stay quiet and you're not right next to it?
I guess maybe that's the learning part. I don't know. I'm about
But
to change my
anyway,
rating.
you want to change your rating.
Ain't
Uh
close.
um so they go to turn the generator off and they're successful, but Ruben's shirt is like stuck on it and I don't think he quite realizes it when he goes to get away from it and so his shirt rips and that's enough noise that the creature who's right next to them who stopped hunting because the generator turned off, but then he heard the shirt rip, so then bye bye Ruben. Ruben's gone.
You go.
So Sam's left with just her cat, um,
Cat's name's Frodo.
which I feel like this was almost kind of a big focus of the movie was the cat. It's an emotional support cat. They made a point earlier in the movie about how she was allowed to have it in the gas station or convenience store, whatever it was, because it's an emotional support cat. And when we see Eric later, I know we haven't introduced him yet, but he kind of has a lot of panic attacks or at least panicky type moments. And eventually she uses the cat to kind of like help ease his tension, which is smart. I mean, that's what the cat's there for. But I feel like this was a big wanting to normalize anxiety and emotional support animals and stuff. I feel like that was something they were really trying to push with this film. Um, was it too much in your face? I don't think so. Um, it's normal for people to have anxiety and stuff, so it wasn't like a big deal. It's just something that I'm not really used to seeing in films be that prominent. But yeah, so I think they hear on a radio that somebody's listening to with headphones about how they can't swim and everybody needs to get to the boats. Um, I think we're at the next day at this point. Like they stayed overnight at whatever that building was, right?
I don't recall. I just know that eventually it's
Either
like
that or maybe it's just that
downpouring
the
or
smoke
something.
cleared because this is still day one.
And the cat finds Joe Eric, Joseph Quinn's character Eric. The cat finds Eric. He's like in a pool of water. They have some sort of connection when they make eye contact, and that's how Sam meets Eric. And then and you can stop me if you want to, but pretty much what the rest of the movie is, like if you think there is something significant to point out. Pretty
The
much
before you get to that, the reason why he's wanting to hang out with Sam is he says that he is from England or somewhere over there,
an exchange
and
student or something.
yes, he went to America to school, so he has no family or friends here. Because she's
Mm,
like, well, don't you have somebody else you can go be with? And the answer is no, he's got nobody else. So why not just stick with this girl that he found?
right. So just kind of gonna glaze through the rest of the movie just because it's a lot of the same. And again, there's not a lot that happens that we haven't seen already. Basically, they are trying to get to a boat that is going to be leaving the city, and with the boat,
Hold up here. They're trying to get pizza.
right? I'm just saying, like eventually towards the end of the movie,
Okay.
like
Yeah, because
ultimate,
she
yes,
doesn't want to get on the boat.
they are trying to get pizza. That is correct. That's the whole motive that Sam has during the movie. And then Eric would like to get out of the city. And so eventually they do get that pizza, don't they?
Yep.
Um, and then they have a handful of encounters with the creatures. Again, nothing super creative here. I don't think there was any alien creature variants that we saw in the movie that were different from what we've seen. So this is kind of where the payoff is about uh, Sam's condition with cancer. So towards the end of the, or at the end of the movie, there's a boat that is going to have everybody leave, and tons of people are on it. Uh, Sam knows, hey, I'm going to be passing soon. And so Sam hands Eric her cat Frodo and basically says, make a run for it. I'm going to cause as much noise as possible to allow you to get time to get to the water and then eventually swim to the boat. Um, well, they missed the boat. And so the boat is leaving. And so they have to, get in there and do it as fast as they possibly can. So as Eric is running down the dock to eventually jump into the water, Sam is going around and like breaking every possible window on the car to set off alarms to draw the attention of these creatures. Um, but, and you correct me if I'm wrong with this. So I've never had my car alarm go off long enough where, I normally push the button and it's over in a couple of seconds. When car alarms go off, do they have a timer? Like, do they turn off after 30 seconds or something?
Um, I don't know if they have a timer or not, but what I can say is when I've heard other people's alarms go off in like parking lots for, somebody bumped their door or something, like even at my workplace, it wasn't somebody trying to break into a car, it's just somebody bumped something and maybe the person was in the back of the factory, so they didn't hear the alarm going off for a few minutes. Those alarms go off for a very long, what seems like a very long time, long enough to be annoying.
That's what
So
I was
at least
thinking.
a couple minutes.
That's what I was thinking. And, I feel like Eric running at full sprint because they don't try to run quiet in this movie. They just run. And so when he's running down the dock, those car alarms are basically turned off within seconds. And so I didn't like that part of the movie. It didn't make sense to me because there were
Well,
some,
she was even watching him. Even when she heard the noise stop, she didn't just keep setting more off. She just stopped and watched him.
right, because there was creatures on the dock. And so they were just chilling. And then they heard the footsteps from him running, so they took off after him. He does make it to the water in the nick of time. Again, the creatures can't swim, so after he gets in the water, he's safe. Make sure the cat is good to go, which I think we talked about in our car in the drive-in that that cat probably would have been trying its best to be flailing everywhere because it's all wet.
That
Um,
cat was the most well-behaved cat I've ever seen. It didn't meow once the entire film. It didn't make any noise a single time. It didn't knock anything off of any tables. It didn't make any noise, and it didn't even try to get away when the guy was swimming with it.
See, that's one of those things that I thought could have been making things tense was watching this cat up on a table and it knocks something over and then the creature shows up and is, trying to hunt them and, the cat's just doing all these stupid things. that wasn't explored in the movie either. So I feel like the whole movie you're kind of wondering, oh, it would be interesting, if we saw what would happen if this cat did some stupid things, and then you never get a payoff from it. So,
To one point towards the cat, it is an emotional support cat, so it is a therapy cat. How
hmm,
much training therapy cats go through, that I don't know. But what I can say is that there are therapy cats or emotional support cats who are just regular cats because they're just there for emotional support as a creature to love. They're not necessarily trained. Um, it, I think for an animal to be a medical support, then it's trained, but an emotional support, I would say probably most of the time they are not like trained. There's no certificate that they get from completing certain training or anything. So I don't feel like that's a crutch that you can use is like, oh, well, it didn't make noise because it's an emotional support cat. I don't think so. I think it still would have made noise.
same. Eric does make it to the boat eventually. They basically go like, "Stop the boat! Someone's in the water!" And then they help him get onto the boat. And
Kudos to him for swimming like that because, even just swimming in like a lake where there's virtually no current, it's hard to swim that far, especially think about just swimming that far,
one armed.
period. And then while holding a cat, like, come on.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the dude was majoring in swim class. I don't know. Could have been. He gets on the boat. They do take off. Uh, Eric had that was another thing that I w wasn't too sure of. So when Eric is on the boat and the movie's pretty much wrapping up, he has a note in his pocket that Sam had written him, and he decided to read the note when he was on the boat. How long was he in the water? How did that note not get destroyed?
I hadn't even thought of that. Oh my gosh.
Or, when he takes it out of his pocket, how is it not dripping with water? So I thought that was kind of dumb too. Like the ink should have been smeared, shouldn't have been legible. I don't know. That's just me.
That went right over my head when we were watching the film, but you're absolutely right. That's crazy.
The last part of the film is where we get the addressing of, why, she is why she is so important to Eric's survival because she has cancer and she is not going to be living very long. She's using herself as bait because she knows that's why she was the one that went around and smashed the windows and did not follow Eric. She stayed behind in the city as a lone survivor, as far as we know. And the last scene, she has her earbuds in and she's listening to some music that really made her feel like I think it was New York, right?
Yeah, she said something about how she didn't realize how alive the city was until it was quiet.
Right.
Like because she's finally allowed to just be at peace without people worrying about her.
Yeah. And then she's listening to her music. She's walking around, taking in the sights of the city. And I thought this was pretty interesting. She stops in her tracks in the middle of the road. And she has basically kind of like a small boombox or small radio that she's plugged into with her headphones. And she just decides to unplug them, blast the music, and then we see the monster appear. So we kind of know instead of growing with the cancer and then eventually dying from cancer, she basically just died right here. Um, Interesting choice for sure. But I mean that was kind of the closure we get with the idea of, you know, her passing soon in this timeline. So that is basically the movie. Of course, there's a handful of things that Eric and Sam go through together, both with the creatures and both on an emotional level. I think there's at one point they even go to like a bar or something and um exchanging drinks, or maybe it was that was in the apartment. I don't know. They were
Uh,
having fun. He was showing her magic tricks.
yeah, I think that was at the bar slash pizza joint that she had wanted to go to.
Gotcha. I'll be 100% people. I had to go to the bathroom during the movie, so there are some of the things that I don't remember. So that's
I
why I got Sarah to help me.
You really didn't miss much.
I didn't
Um,
think I did, just based on what was happening up until that point.
yeah.
Um, so you do get a little bit of character development between the two, but other than that, there's not a whole lot there. So I don't know how many people, decide to listen to the spoilers after the non-spoiler section, but I'm gonna drop it to a 4. 4 out of 10. Just because the more I talked about it, the more I was like, I don't know. I think this is slightly below average. So a
Four
4,
out of 10 for you, 3 out of 10 for me.
right. Anything else you want to talk about for this movie?
I feel like we already talked about it way too much, so.
All right, we're gonna wrap it up so that this discussion can go to a quiet place. If you enjoyed this type of video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We are doing at least 2 movies a month with movie discussions, so check us out in July. I know we're gonna be seeing Deadpool. I'm pretty sure we're gonna be
Woohoo!
seeing Maxine, so we might be covering that as well. And I think I haven't talked to Sarah yet, so she gonna hear it here. Maybe she'll do a video vlog of how Twister went because I really don't want to see that movie, but she does. And so maybe we'll get that too. But uh drops a like if you like the video and drops a comment letting us know your thoughts. I know this movie on Rotten Tomatoes has great scores, but again, maybe if this is your first entry into the series, maybe you'd like it a little bit better because you're not familiar with everything. But I feel like as two viewers that have seen the other two, it really brings it down a bit, unfortunately. But as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.